that we're being recorded. There it goes.
There she is.
Somebody's
There it is.
recording.
Yep, we
Okay.
got it. You hit
Okay,
the
we
right
can
button.
start. Tom and I had a quick chat and I could read his bio and he said, "Don't bother. It's on my first slide." So welcome Tom Austin to talk to us tonight about butterflies and everything around them.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me figure out how to get this PowerPoint up and share my screen.
More people are coming as well.
Might want to give it 5 minutes just in case.
I
We're
have a yellow-throated warbler coming to my feeder. It's very exciting
nice.
on my porch. He's so
No.
pretty.
Eating mealworms or
Suet
just
cakes.
oh, cool. Mine disappeared pretty early. I've
This is
not
a
seen him since
baby. He's
spring.
got fuzz.
Hmm.
So I think he's a baby.
For whatever reason, the woodpeckers have been hammering my suet this summer. I guess just because bugs have been down or something with the drought, but
Yeah.
I've never had them go after suet in summer like this.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, all of mine are hitting suet too.
And it was like nothing touched it all winter and nothing touched it all spring, and then just all of a sudden, boom.
A lot of habitat loss on around.
Baby
Well,
mouths
hopefully not
too.
in my neck of the woods, or
Yeah.
I'm out of a job.
You're not doing your job well.
That is kind of the job, isn't it?
Yep, a bunch more people came in. We went from like 23 to 26. So
We're not the most punctual crew, so
Oh no.
everybody's still pouring their wine and corking their beer.
we're better in scan. We usually end up starting scan trips like 40 minutes late. So
Well, Tom, you can still put your bio up and we can read it.
yeah, much more entertaining than looking at me. Let me figure out. Do There we go. Is that showing up for everybody?
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
All right, perfect. It's been a hot minute since I've done a Zoom presentation, so this could go very poorly, but we'll have fun with it.
We're a very forgiving crew.
I'm just going to give it another minute or two just for folks to trickle in.
When Tom starts, y'all, if you're not actually speaking to Tom, turn on your mute, turn off your audio because it'll interfere.
Please do. I'm easily distracted. I'll absolutely lose my train of thought. So
I have a magic button too that can just do everybody.
You have the power,
I
Isabel.
do. I just have to find the power.
all right. Well, oh, my phone's ringing. Let me wait for that to go by.
Mhm.
And there we go. All right. So it's been 5 minutes past, I guess. Let's get this train rolling. Can't have a train wreck unless the train's rolling. But my name is Tom Austin. I'm your speaker for tonight, and this is a presentation I have been wanting to put together for probably 6 years now, but have just never really found the impetus or reason to. But thankfully, I decided I was going to do this and then had to actually build this like 6 months later after I promised Nikki I was going to do a talk about butterflies. So I have been able to whip together an introduction to butterflies here in the South Carolina Low Country. And hopefully this will go kind of soup to nuts over the entirety of butterflies, their life history, their ecology, some of the most unique species we have, the overall families and their significance here to us here in the South Carolina, to our ecosystems, and to kind of larger conservation efforts at large, not just here, but across the United States. First, a bit about me. My degree is in wildlife and fisheries biology. I am a professional ecologist and conservationist with the Edisto Island Open Land Trust. I'm also a nature writer. I write a weekly article series for the Land Trust called Flora and Fauna Friday, and I'm also a published author. Just last year, I published my first book, The Flora and Fauna of Edisto Island and the Low Country Sea Islands, book 1. But if you know me, you probably think of me more as just a general ecologist or as a botanist. But really, my specialty is butterflies. I've spent my entire career as an ecologist working to conserve and survey butterflies all across the state of South Carolina. I'm a published lepidopterist in peer-reviewed journals. I'm an active butterfly researcher. I'm in the middle of a year-long butterfly survey right now here in the Low Country. I'm the immediate past president for the Carolina Butterfly Society, and I'm also a pollinator garden enthusiast. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about and working with butterflies. So just what is a butterfly? Well, they're insects in the order Lepidoptera, specifically in the superfamily Papilionioideae. They are diurnal insects. They fly during the day. And kind of the distinguishing characteristic that they have that separates them from other Lepidoptera is that they have clubbed antennae, sort of like Q-tip shaped. As you can see over here on this little metal mark over here on the right, they have little clubs at the end of their antennae. Butterflies visit flowers. They have a coiled proboscis that they use to drink nectar, and they also move pollen around. And also, if you're like me and you think a lot about names and the significance of names to species, you may be wondering where the term butterfly came from. And it's really, that origin is kind of unknown. You might think it's a spoonerism of the term flutterby, switching those two letters around and turning it into butterfly. But really, the term butterfly or the term flutterby is actually the opposite. That's someone flipping around the letters in butterfly and going, oh, that actually means the same thing because a butterfly does in fact flutter by. And the first real occurrences of that are kind of, in Victorian era, Shakespeare times in England. There's also a lot of old folklore about them being dairy thieves, witches disguised as butterflies that come in and drink all of your leftover milk and eat all of your butter that you leave out on the counter. But to me, the most compelling origin of the term butterfly is that it's the original common name for the cabbage white, which is a butter yellow butterfly found all across Europe that is a common pest on cabbages and other cole crops. So the term more than likely originated as a common name for cabbage whites, which would have been out in fields very early on in European civilization, with caterpillars eating on cabbages and the butterflies flying all around human settlements. And so people called them butterflies because they were butter-colored things that flew. And eventually that just came to be the common name for the entire superfamily that is butterflies. Dialing in a little bit more specifically and taxonomically, I want to kind of point out the differences between butterflies and moths. Again, butterflies we're kind of have a squares and rectangles situation here. All butterflies are moths, but only some moths are butterflies. So butterflies are mainly distinguished by having those clubbed antennae with the little Q-tip ends on them, whereas moths have generally feathery or thread-like antennae on their heads. Butterflies, since they're diurnal and they fly during the day, they have great eyesight. They can even see UV light, whereas moths, since they're out at night, since they can sense light very sensitively, but it's really just for phototaxis and guiding, and they really just see in black and white. They don't have that extreme color vision that butterflies do, and instead they have a much stronger sense of smell, which is the feathery antennae are very good for smelling. That's how insects smell, is through their antennae. So since butterflies fly during the day, that also changes a lot of their other physiology, habits, and life history in order to revolve around living in the light versus moving around in the cloak of darkness. Most butterflies are very colorful and boldly patterned, whereas moths are more camouflaged and more earth tones. If all you do in the day is just hide and try not to be eaten, you don't want to be bright and colorful. So moths are camouflage, whereas butterflies are out in the day moving around. So they're brightly colored in order to communicate to other butterflies who they are, and also to communicate to predators, such as with, warning colors, such as in monarchs and other brightly colored species that are toxic. Butterflies, since they need to see their surroundings in order to detect predators and other butterflies, they perch prominently on top of vegetation. They want to be where they can, rapidly move around, take flight, fly away, and also see what's going on around them. So you'll see them land on top of a leaf, on top of a stem of grass, on top of a flower, or on the side of a tree trunk with open surroundings around them so that they can watch everything that's going around and signal to other things in the area. Whereas moths, they typically fly into vegetation, hide under leaves, or go up into bark and just cling real closely to it. Additionally, butterflies generally keep their wings forward, kind of, shoulders up versus shoulders down in moth. And they either have their wings spread eagle all the way out or folded upward. And this allows them to display the patterns on their wings most prominently. So when wings are closed, they're usually more cryptic, more hidden, more camouflaged. And when the wings are open, they usually have bright, colorful patterns that they can display to either ward off predators or to communicate to other butterflies what species they are and what they're about. Whereas conversely, moths tend to keep their wings folded close to their body, and they're trying to be as small and as cryptic as possible. And of course, biology is the study of exceptions, so there is exceptions to every single one of these rules. Nothing is cut and dry with butterflies and moths, but these are all generalities that hold true for the most part here in the Carolinas. Going a little bit deeper into the anatomy of butterflies, there's a bunch of intimidating charts and graphs here on this slide, but I want to really simplify that and just kind of talk about the highlights here. So butterflies have typical insect anatomy. They have a head where all their sensory organs and mouth parts are, a thorax where all their appendages are, and an abdomen where the reproductive organs and a lot of their other organs are located. They have 4 wings, 2 forewings, 2 hind wings. That's important for identifying features on those wings in order to identify a butterfly to species. Those wings are membranous, and they are permeated throughout by a series of veins that provide them rigidity and support. And the spaces in between those veins that are membranes, those are called cells. And then on the wing itself, you have features such as eye spots, which are concentric rings of patterns that try and mimic vertebrate eyes. You have tails, which are kind of ribbony appendages that hang off of the trailing edge of the hind wing. And then you also have lines that run perpendicular across the wing. And each of these are features that are patterns that signal to other butterflies some form of communication, but they're very useful in identifying butterflies to species. So you need to know about these things in order to be able to interpret field guides. The same goes for the regions of the wing. You have 7 main wing regions and then 6 band regions on each wing. So those 7 regions are this diagram down here in the center at the bottom. The tip of the wing is called the apex. The bottom of the wing, or bottom corner of the wing, top tip, bottom tip, is called the tornus, and the inside tip of the wing is called the base. The area between the base and the apex, that leading edge, is called the costa. The outer edge between the apex and the tornus is called the margin, and that trailing edge, the inside margin, is the inner margin. And then the area in between all of this, right in the middle of the wing, that's called the disc. And then you have bands on the wing. There's 6 regions here. The closest to the body is the basal region. Outside of that is the medial region. Outside of that is the postmedial region. Outside of that are the border ocelli. This is where you have your eye spots on butterfly wings, is in this border ocelli region. Outside of that, but inside from the very edge, is the submarginal area. And then on the very edge of the wing is the marginal area. And butterfly wings are covered in scales. These are chitinous overlapping plates found on the wing. It's kind of like the equivalent of like scales in a reptile or like feathers on a bird. These are kind of the outer coating on the wings of a butterfly, and these serve many functions. First, they armor the wing. So wings are very delicate, very sensitive. They're just membranes and veins. That's the only thing that holds the wing together. So having these scales on there provides some form of lubrication and defense. So if that wing bumps against some hard surface, the scales kind of act like talcum powder, and they shear off, keeping the wing intact. They kind of serve a boundary layer in between the wing and the environment. The scales, as well as the fine hairs on the wing, They provide waterproofing. So they are fine enough that water's surface tension can't break around these hairs or around these scales. That keeps the wing from getting wet. Water just bounces off because if a butterfly's wing gets wet, now its wing weighs like 4 times what it did before and it can't fly. So the scales and the hairs on the wing waterproof the butterfly. Then additionally, they're camouflage because each one of these scales is its own individual color, and you can think about them as pixels in a digital image. So each one of these scales is a different color, and all of these scales collectively together form the patterns and the shapes and the overall, features of the wing itself, what we are seeing with our eyes and we're perceiving. And the main purpose of these scales is for communication beyond all these other structural benefits. So males have a feature called androconia, which are specialized scales on their wings that produce male pheromones. That allows male butterflies to identify each other so that males can patrol territories, fight with each other, and kind of, establish a dominance hierarchy. And it also allows females to identify male butterflies when they approach them. And these scales have two different forms of color. They have pigments and structural colors. So pigments are what you typically think of when you think of colors. This is like paint. There's some sort of chemical property into the scale itself that light that hits it is absorbed and some light is reflected, and the light you see is what's being reflected. And then you have structural colors where the actual microscopic shape of the surface of the wing interacts with a specific wavelength of light, reflecting that wavelength just as bright as it came in. So there's no loss of, intensity from that. And that's what you see generally as iridescence or metallic colors on a butterfly wing. And you can have these layered on top of each other where you can have a wing that has, base pigment color, but then also a structural color on top of that, which can create some interesting patterns and colors and everything. And it makes it very hard to describe the colors of certain butterflies because depending on the angle, it might be a different color. The patterns on butterfly wings don't just help us as naturalists identify them, they help butterflies identify their kin out in the wild. So since butterflies are sight-based, when they want to identify other butterflies within their species, they do so by sight. They are identifying butterflies themselves. And so their patterns help them distinguish between other members of their own species. Then additionally, some butterflies use their vibrant colors to ward off predators by demonstrating that they're toxic or by mimicking another species that is toxic. Butterflies go through metamorphosis. So typical insect metamorphic cycle, you have an egg, a larva, a pupa, and an adult. In butterflies, the larva is called a caterpillar, the pupa is called a chrysalis, and the adult is called a butterfly. So it's egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, butterfly. Butterflies and all moths are hollow metabolites, so they go through complete metamorphosis. Moths, including butterflies, flies, beetles, wasps, and a couple other species go through hollow metabolism, and so they have a completely different larval stage from their adult stage. If you think about a hemimetabolite, like say a cockroach, a baby cockroach, and an adult cockroach look the same. One's just smaller and kind of weird looking, but they're pretty much the same body plan. They just get bigger and more advanced as they get older. Whereas with hollow metabolites, their larvae and their adult are absolutely nothing alike. And that provides a lot of benefits. But the interesting thing and kind of cool, macabre body horror thing about hollow metabolism is that when a caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, it melts into soup. It digests itself and just turns into basically like an egg yolk. And the only thing that's left is the brain and the endocrine system and a couple of major nerves. And it just rebuilds itself from the ground up like an embryo into a butterfly. It's crazy. Very interesting, because they have gut bacteria and that kind of stuff, and somehow that just ends up in the right place. It's wild. Anyway, but the main benefit of hollow metabolism is that it allows insect larvae to eat a completely different food and occupy a completely different niche from their adult stage. So caterpillars eat leaves, butterflies drink nectar. That is a completely different digestive system that you need to do those things to convert, grass into caterpillar versus basically being a hummingbird. Very different lifestyles, very different niches. And that's the main advantage of hollow metabolism and why we see the most successful groups of insects utilizing hollow metabolism is because it allows that niche structuring between larvae and adults so that adults are not competing with their own larvae. And more broadly about butterfly life history, each species of butterfly has its own unique life history. All of them are specialized to some degree. As insects, they are adapted to specific plants, which are themselves adapted to specific habitats. And then additionally, some plants are adapted to certain seasons and certain times. And so some butterflies only come out in certain seasons. And so you can have two butterflies that are using the same host plant and the same habitat, but if they fly at different times, then they're not actually competing with each other. Caterpillars generally need leaves, they need foliage of some type, and they are literal eating machines. They eat 24/7. From the time the egg is laid until that caterpillar turns into a chrysalis, 2 to 3 weeks later, they just eat nonstop. They like increase their body mass by 10 to 20 times in 2 to 3 weeks. That's like a dog turning into a cow in half a month. They grow and they eat nonstop. That's the only thing caterpillars do. Butterflies, alternatively, they need flowers in order to be able to get the fuel that they need to fly around actively and generate, eggs and to reproduce. They also visit puddles for minerals to get all the trace nutrients that they need to be able to, build eggs and that kind of stuff. Butterflies are also flying around looking for other butterflies, and they're also looking for host plants to lay eggs on, specifically females. And that's the main things that butterflies are doing. They're eating, they're getting minerals, they're looking for other butterflies, and they're looking for host plants to lay eggs on. And then we have two kind of main groups here in the Carolinas that we see that kind of divide the ecology and the significance of our butterflies locally. We have sedentary residents. These are driven entirely by local habitat. They need to have local host plants and local flowers here in South Carolina in their home populations in order for them to exist. They are more consistent from year after year because they are here in the state. And they may radiate and spread outward into surrounding areas come summer and fall if they have a boom year and a great population. And they go out, and these butterflies that radiate out are looking for new places to establish new populations. Some of these are very specialized. They're found, only on one host plant, which grows in only one very limited habitat here in the state. So there's some butterflies that occupy maybe like 100 acres in the entirety of South Carolina. And then others that are here that probably occupy literally 75% of the entire state. Although they're sedentary residents, they're very generalized. They can have very highly varied flight times, but generally when you're seeing stuff in early spring, those are your sedentary residents. They've been here overwintering all year. This includes your swallowtails, your satyrs, your hair streaks, your dusky wings, as well as the little metalmark and the falcate orange tip, and many, many other species. These are the home bodies. This is your home team here. These are the butterflies that you are actively protecting when you're doing conservation and butterfly gardening and that kind of work. Then we have the tropical migrants. Their main populations are down in Florida and other tropical areas around the Gulf Coast. They fly north with each successive generation, and usually we end up getting some of these butterflies in late spring, early summer. If as they grow and expand out of more tropical Florida, they eventually end up here, around late summer. This right now, actually, we're just starting to get the summer wave of tropical migrants moving through. These butterflies are really just making pit stops for nectar here in South Carolina. If we get some earlier in the year, they're laying eggs and they're having additional broods here in the state. But as they're moving north, they're mainly looking for nectar in order to continue that northward migration. This includes some of our most common and well-recognized butterflies like the cloudless sulfur, the Gulf fritillary, the Eucola skipper, which can be our most abundant butterfly in, all three of these actually can be the most abundant butterfly at a location when they have a really good boom year. Monarchs are this as well as painted ladies. Those two species actually have a return journey. But it's important to note that with the monarch's migration, the monarch that leaves Mexico is not the monarch that comes back to Mexico. It is its great-grandchild or great-great-grandchild. As these tropical migrants move further northward, they find host plants, they lay eggs, they have a new brood. That caterpillar grows, crystallizes, emerges, and then that adult flies further northward, and they make several hundred-mile jumps with each generation. And then that final generation, when it detects that the day is getting shorter and fall is approaching, their internal hormonal changes happen, and they shift to, instead of trying to reproduce, to live as long as possible, and they make a return journey back. And it's that fall brood that then eventually returns back to that tropical habitat. And then that is the one that then lays eggs in spring. And then the cycle repeats every year. And there's usually about 3 to 5 generations each year for these species. So just how many butterflies are there here in the Carolinas? There are 183 species of butterfly thus far documented from South Carolina and North Carolina. I had to update this number twice as I was making this PowerPoint, which does not happen normally. We had two new records here for South Carolina this year. We had the Irina's azure, which was newly described to science from South Carolina this spring. And then we also had our first record of a Western Pygmy Blue literally last week here in South Carolina. So we added two new butterflies to South Carolina's list here in 2026. Here, kind of locally around the Charleston area, we have 130 species of butterflies. Those belong to 6 different butterfly families. Worldwide, there's 6 butterfly families. Asterisk there because they're the moth butterflies technically count now according to taxonomists, but they're weird and they're not in the United States, so we're just going to ignore them for now. There's 6. Those 6 families are the swallowtails, Papilionidae, the sulfurs, Pieridae, the hairstreaks, Lycaenidae, the brushfoots, and Nephalidae, the skippers and Hesperidae, and the middlemarks and Rhyodinidae. And I want to go over each one of these families here in a little bit of detail. So the swallowtails, we have 8 species in the Carolinas. 6 of them are common here in the Low Country. These guys are all large. Some are very large. They're generally spread-winged with pointed forewings. They have swallowtails trailing from their hind wing. These are a defensive feature. These mimic the antennae of the butterfly. They may not look like it to you, but when one of these is flying around in the air and it's doing, maneuvers to dodge birds that are attacking it, those birds just have a split second to make a decision about where they're going to grab. And those antennae sure look a lot, or those tails sure look a lot like antennae when, you've got a face full of wings trying to figure out what to bite. And so oftentimes birds and other predators end up grabbing these tails, and these tails are very fragile and they just rip off the back of the wing, and the butterfly, makes a clean escape. And then whatever that would-be predator just ends up with a mouthful of dusty membranes. They have a floating gliding flight. They're very strong flyers. You'll see them kind of floating around in the air, kind of languidly. They don't move very fast. They're very easy to see and spot. And most of these species will host on trees and shrubs. The black swallowtail uses several different kinds of garden herbs, and the pipevine swallowtail uses special pipe vines found here. It's really just 2 species here in the Low Country of host plant that they have. The sulfurs and whites, we have 16 species in the Carolinas. 9 are common here in the Low Country. These are medium to large in size, kind of, silver dollar sized on average. They're typically close-winged, and they have sort of a rounded triangular shape and profile, more round than triangle. These tend to have a base color that's either white, yellow, or orange, and most of them host either on legumes or small herbs, and this includes our most abundant and notable species like the sleepy orange and cloudless sulfur that we see huge numbers of here in the summer. Our hair streaks, we have 32 species in the Carolinas, but only 18 are really common in the Low Country. These guys are either small to very small in size. They're all close-winged. They have a triangular shape and profile. Most of them are either gray or brown in base color, some black, some white, some more green. Many of them have orange markings on the ventral surface of their wing, and a lot of males have bright blue iridescence above. That's a structural color. That's where that blue comes from. It gives it a very bright metallic color. And these host on all manner of plants. Some of these species are extremely specialized. The most specialist species that we have belong to the hair streaks. Our brushfoots, we have 51 species in the Carolinas. 29 of them are common in the Low Country. They're very diverse in their shape, their color, their appearance, and their behaviors. They range in size from quite small to quite large, from as small as a pearl crescent to as large as a monarch or a Diana fritillary. They come in all shapes and sizes. Some of them are closed-winged, some of them are open-winged. Really, it depends on the subgroup. There are many subgroups within here. They all perch on 4 legs. That is their main defining feature. And their front 2 legs are vestigial. They have brush feet. As you can see here on this satyr, this kind of fuzz on the front of its face, that is its front legs. Its front legs have been reduced into these little comb-like, brush-like structures that hang around the face. Scientists believe that this helps them with their sense of smell and their sense of taste. Probably, it's not 100% certain on here on all of these, well, just these 2 here, where I actually am showing the legs. These guys host on all manner of plants, some forbs, some grasses, some trees. Our next family are the skippers, Hesperidae. We have 75 species in the Carolinas, 37 are common in the Low Country. This is our most diverse family here in the Carolinas by far. They are medium to very small in size. They're both open and closed winged, mainly closed winged. They have a triangular wedge shape, like a doorstop in profile. They're very small. So they're also very fast flying and compact. They have a large body but small wings. This allows them to be very muscular, and they're kind of the Olympic sprinters of the butterfly world. They can move very fast for very short periods of time. Other more larger ones that are more spread wing, they're able to do more gliding, more long distance flights. These host on all manner of plants, but most of them are on grasses or legumes. And then last and also least are our metalmarks. We only have one species of metalmark here in the Carolinas, the little metalmark. It's very narrow ranging here in South Carolina. Their main population in the state is in the Francis Marion National Forest. They're a rusty orange color overall. They have a black cobweb pattern overall, and they also have distinct reflective metallic silver bands, and they host on thistles, mainly yellow thistle. Now I've got 6 individual species from each one of these families that I want to highlight that has some special aspect to it that's unique among all of our other butterflies, or that kind of defines their family. And the first up is the pipevine swallowtail. They have gregarious caterpillars, so they're one of few species we have here in South Carolina where their caterpillars bunch up together and they stay together in big groups. They're also toxic. Their body sequesters ristolochic acid from the pipevines that they eat, and the caterpillars sequester that into their body, and that makes the caterpillars toxic. The caterpillars are orange and black, and then the butterfly is this brilliant black and blue, which is another form of aposematic coloration, which you see in a lot of butterflies and other animals where they're either, bright orange, red, and black, or yellow, or some kind of bright blue, or some other vibrant neon color that signals to predators, this thing is making itself super obvious, and that's a bad sign. I probably shouldn't eat this. I'm going to have a bad time. And so because the species is toxic, it's mimicked by many other species. This form of mimicry is called Batesian mimicry. So pipevine swallowtails are mimicked by pretty much every other female swallowtail that we have here in the Low Country. They all take on this black and blue coloration. Even tiger swallowtails, we have dark morph female tiger swallowtails here that mimic pipevine swallowtails. And then also the red-spotted purple. We have a distinct subspecies here, the red-spotted purple of the white admiral, that directly mimics the pipevine. Where the pipevine doesn't exist, it's not red-spotted nor purple. It's the white admiral. It's a very different butterfly outside of the range of the pipevine. And the Diana fritillary does as well. The male Diana fritillary looks nothing like a pipevine, but the female is a dead ringer for a pipevine swallowtail. In the whites, we have the Great Southern White. This actually hosts on a couple of plants found in the salt marsh, mainly saltwort, Batis maritima. And it's also found on other mustard species as well, things such as pepperweed and cole crops in agricultural fields. It's a climate advent spreading north from Florida. It's been steadily moving up the East Coast, and it actually became established here in the Ace Basin in South Carolina for a brief period of time. I think it might be established fully in the Port Royal Sound area, but I haven't done a lot of surveying there. But there was a permanent population on Edisto Island from 2017 until 2023. But the winter of 2023, we had an extreme nor'easter tide in December that I think wiped out the population, killing all the caterpillars and chrysalises that were overwintering. And I've not seen them since. But for, 7 years straight, we had this rare species of butterfly on Edisto Island. For the gossamer wings, this is one of our most specialized butterflies, the harvester. They're scarce and hard to find. You usually find them more so in the upstate and in rich floodplain forests and river systems. They puddle often and they drink sweat. They'll land right on your arm and just sit there docile as can be, licking sweat off of your arm. They have eruption and boom years. So some years they're extremely common. Other years they're nowhere to be found. And their caterpillar is carnivorous. They actually eat aphids. They eat woolly beech aphids and woolly alder aphids, and it's the only carnivorous caterpillar found here in the United States. In the brush feet, you can't have a presentation about butterflies and not having Tom, the satyr guy Austin, talk about satyrs as the intricate satyr. This species doesn't visit flowers. It drinks sap. All of our satyrs generally don't drink sap at all or drink nectar at all. They don't really come to flowers. They just drink tree sap or visit carrion or animal dung to get all of their nutrients and, calories. This is a cryptic species. It was first described to science in 2014. It hid in plain sight for 220 years. Its partner in crime, the Carolina satyr, is probably the most widespread butterfly here in the Carolinas, the most widespread resident. It's found probably 75% of the gross land area in the state has a Carolina satyr on it, within 100 square feet. And the intricate satyr is fully enveloped by the range of the Carolina satyr, but the two are distinct and specialized within that range, and they look almost identical. It's very hard to tell the two apart. Actually, I, fresh out of college, did some of the foundational work on determining field identification techniques and vetting their accuracy here in the South Carolina Lowcountry. And you can, in fact, accurately tell them apart in the field up to about 95% accuracy just by looking at the shape of this little squiggle right here. It's extremely subtle, but once you stare at about 5,000 different little brown butterflies, you eventually get an eye for it. It becomes easy after the first 1,000. Take my word for it. But what really kind of highlights this as a cryptic species, because there's some cryptic species where it's really debatable whether or not it's a real species. Is it just a geographic difference or something? With this one, they are genetically distinct. They physically cannot interbreed and reproduce with each other. They can't hybridize. They have different physiology. It's not just the line squiggle. Male Carolina satyrs have androconia on their forewings, and male intricate satyrs do not. And I really just wanted to point this out because there is so much left to learn in the field of entomology, even in something that has been so intensively described as butterflies, probably the most studied, observed, and talked about, cared about insects anywhere in the world. And we're still finding new species like the intricate satyr in 2014 or like the Irina's azure literally this year. There is so much to learn in the field of entomology. For the skippers, we have the yucca giant skipper. This is incredibly large for a skipper. You find these commonly on barrier islands, but up until probably about 5 years ago, you could hardly find them at all in South Carolina, but they apparently had a really good year in South Georgia and recolonized the whole of the South Carolina Lowcountry. They used to be common here in the past, and they got wiped out. I heard from a parasite, I think is what I've been told, and then they're back now, and they're all over the place. These are really odd, kind of primitive skippers. They're highly specialized to feed on mature yucca plants. Their caterpillar will just bore a 1/2-inch hole all the way through the stem of like a 3-foot tall yucca plant into the ground. Like this. You can see it over here, that they'll just, like a drill, just bore a hole through a woody stem of a yucca plant. And their chrysalis can actually move, unlike other butterfly chrysali, which generally anchor themselves with silk to some form of vegetation. The caterpillar of the yucca giant skipper can wriggle itself up and down in this tube in the yucca in order to get to a sunspot, get up to where it's drier, where there's more humidity, down where it's a little cooler, and thermoregulate within the stem of the yucca plant over winter until it's ready to emerge in April of the following year. And they only fly for about 2 weeks in early April each year, and the males are absolute speed demons. They fly at about 50 miles an hour. They are flat-footed faster than a hummingbird. It is wild to see. It's like your thumb, and it's just zipping around at highway speed. They're wicked. They're weird. And then, of course, the only one I can select for little metal marks, or for the metal marks, is the little metal mark. This is a monophyletic family here. We just have this one species. They have these distinct metallic silver scales on the wing. You don't really see silver as a color, especially iridescent silver, on any of our other butterflies. And this is a structural color. It's basically a mirror in bug form. They're very rare in the Carolinas, very narrowly distributed, yet their host plant, yellow thistle, is found everywhere in the state. So it's mainly, it appears, some habitat or sort of larger environmental factor that is limiting their range and not necessarily their host plants. And so with that, we've really, now you have, a crash course on what butterflies are and what they're all about. And now I want to talk about how they're significant to the grander conservation story here in the Carolinas, as well as throughout the all of the U.S. really. The 4 main important features that butterflies have to conservation as a whole is that they are pollinators of our native plants. Mainly butterflies are visiting tubular and flat flowers, and while they're visiting these flowers, they are also distributing picking up picking up pollen and then moving that pollen in between plants, facilitating cross-pollination and ensuring, the genetic, resilience of these native plant populations by moving that pollen around. Butterflies are not fantastic pollinators. Bees and wasps get the vast majority of the credit, but there are some plants that are specialized to butterflies. A lot of stuff that is specialized to hummingbirds here will also be pollinated by some of our larger butterflies. And a lot of our flat flowers will also make use of butterflies by just putting their anthers up really high and forcing butterflies to walk over the anthers, pick up pollen underneath them, and move that around. But butterflies have no use for pollen, so they're not really adapted to picking up and moving pollen because they can't eat it, but they do move it around. Butterflies, as larvae, as caterpillars, also provide valuable plant population control. So their caterpillars will eat vegetation, and that provides a natural check and balance to native plant populations, because otherwise you can end up with monocultures or plants that take over an area. But caterpillars, as a primary consumer of vegetation, will control those plants. They'll put an upper limit and downward pressure onto those plants so that no one plant dominates a habitat. And then on the flip side, controlling those caterpillars, they are a major food source, not just for butterflies, but all Lepidoptera. Birds, wasps, spiders, lizards, everything eats, moth and butterfly caterpillars. They're highly nutritious. They're very abundant. So these predators control the butterflies control the plants. It's all part of a system. It's a food web. It's ecology. Y'all know all about that. But Lepidoptera are very important in the food chain as a primary consumer. And then additionally, they're very valuable for public engagement because just everybody loves a cool butterfly. I mean, look at this Hessel's hair streak down here. This photo was literally taken of us taking this photo right there. Like, come on. It's iridescent green. It's cool. Anytime you have a butterfly that lands on you or something, you just can't help but look at it and smile. I mean, they're great ambassadors. So there's three kind of buckets of conservation tools that butterflies fall into. Firstly, they're indicator species. So an indicator species is one that's easy to see and it's easy to identify. It allows you to go out there, survey for it, and use that as a proxy for other environmental work. Butterflies are highly visible and readily identifiable. The butterflies need to identify each other by sight, which makes it easy for us to also identify them by sight. And the presence of an indicator species indicates, the presence of something else, or it indicates the lack of something else. So if you see a butterfly in a specific location, you know that more than likely the host plant of that butterfly is also there if it's a resident butterfly and not a tropical migrant. And where you see a lot of butterfly diversity, a whole abundance of butterflies, a great breadth of species of butterflies, you know that you also have a very healthy plant population because all those butterflies need different host plants. So going out surveying for butterflies when you can't, there's probably 10 times as many plants as there are butterflies in a given location. Knowing that you have a lot of butterflies means that you also generally have a high diversity of plants, and so you can use it kind of as a quick litmus test for the health of an ecosystem. Additionally, if you see a lot of host plants for a butterfly, but you see no butterflies at all, that can also be that absence can be an indicator of something else, such as that habitat might be damaged or degraded, or there's some other feature of the landscape that is not there in order to sustain that butterfly, such as, insecticide use. If someone is spraying insecticides everywhere and killing butterflies, the lack of butterflies in a site that should otherwise be suitable can indicate that something else is going on. Additionally, butterflies serve well as an umbrella species. So an umbrella species is one that, when conserved, will protect many other species. Just like how an umbrella shields you from the rain, everything beneath the umbrella is protected by the fact that the umbrella is there. Monarchs are a great example. There is a national level interest in conserving monarchs. They range all across the United States, and they rely on specialized host plants that are adapted to a whole suite of different diverse habitats across their range. And these host plants are most abundant in grasslands, savannas, prairies, and meadows, which are other habitats of conservation concern. So when you protect monarch habitat, you're also protecting bobwhite, turkeys, sparrow, bumblebees, bats, longleaf pine, American chaffseed, diamondback rattlesnakes, you name it. If you're protecting longleaf pine, you're protecting, Bachman sparrows and red-cockaded woodpeckers and everything else that utilizes it. And so butterflies are really good at that because butterflies are connected to so many other things in the environment, so that when efforts are done to protect butterflies, you protect everything else they rely on, which so many other things also rely upon. And so you get a lot more bang for your buck by focusing on this one species. It's trickle down. Butterflies are also great gateway species. These are species that it's easy for anyone to interact with. They help win the hearts and mind of the public. They're ambassadors for larger conservation efforts. Butterflies make great learning aids because they're beautiful, they're harmless, they're easy to care for, and they're common. The black swallowtail is the classic gateway species, just period. They're found across the entirety of the eastern United States. They host on common herbs and vegetables that you can pick up at any big box store that anyone's going to plant in their home garden. They're easy to see. They're easy to get them to come into your garden to look at, to see. Kids can go out, watch the caterpillars grow from egg all the way up to a chrysalis, take the chrysalis inside, rear it in a terrarium, hold the butterfly in their hand, release it into the wild. It provides people that through line and that connection to nature that's so much harder for folks to get experiences with these days. And so butterflies are kind of that outreached hand that helps bring people into the fold and think about larger conservation issues at large. So just what is threatening butterflies that we need to be conserving them? Well, habitat degradation is the main thing. Fire suppression has reduced the quantity, the diversity, and the health of a lot of host plant populations all around. Since butterflies depend on those host plants, if we lose those host plants, we lose those butterflies, and a lot of our habitats here in the Southeast are dependent on fire. Butterflies also need nectar. A lot of plants bloom better, grow better whenever they've had that fire disturbance and have that flush of new growth. A lot of our public right-of-ways are just flat out overworked these days. You've got exotic plants that are not only being deliberately managed for, but they're being deliberately planted. And then there's flippant herbicide and insecticide use in these right-of-ways in order to control them in a state which they really don't need to be in. There's just not that thought about how we could make these landscapes work better for the environment, for us, and for conservation writ large. There's also land conversion, urbanization, paving, conversion of areas to lawns, as well as in the industrialization of agriculture and forestry across the Southeast. Modern agricultural practices are pretty much sterilized wildlife. They're just so tidy. Small farms are fine. Organic farms are fine, but when you think about the vast cornfields out in the Midwest, or like some of the center row pivots and cotton fields and stuff here in the Midlands, there's really not any room for butterflies or other beneficial insects out there. And there's just too much of a reliance on pesticides these days for both weed control and insect control, and that just pushes out all that room for stuff to live in the margins. Pesticide overuse is one of the big things, especially in urban and suburban areas, that are putting pressure on butterflies. Insecticides are intentionally designed to kill insects that eat plants. Butterflies are insects that eat plants. There's a few butterflies that are even agricultural pests. So insecticides will kill butterflies because they're insects that eat pests. They have been designed to kill butterflies. They're not necessarily the target species, but they're going to work on them. So if you have a butterfly garden or some other garden that you're using for wildlife, just flat out do not use insecticides in there. If you have to use some form of contact insecticide for something really particularly nasty or an invasive, use that very precisely. Don't do any kind of broadcast applications over foliage, and please, for the love of all that is holy, do not spray for mosquitoes. Use a dunk. Just don't. On the flip side, herbicides can generally be used safely with some caveats. So most contain surfactants, so do not spray them over insects, because you would not want to be, sprayed with detergent while you're out trying to eat a meal. It's not good for the insects. It's not the herbicide itself, the active ingredient, that's harming them. It's, the other chemicals, surfactants, and soaps within them that harm the insects. Additionally, those weeds may be beneficial host plants. So to conserve butterfly habitat, we have kind of two main buckets. We can protect and manage what we have, and we can restore and create new habitat where we've done previous damage. So in the protect manage side of things, reduce pesticides wherever you can, use integrated pest management whenever possible. We need to implement better forest management. We need to bring back prescribed fire where possible. We need to remove invasive species from the landscape that are preventing our native plants from flourishing, which is, excluding butterflies and other beneficial insects from the landscape. We need to prioritize conservation easements and other forms of land protection on private land to keep what we still have. And then we need to expand our national wildlife refuges, our heritage preserves, our WMAs, our state parks, so that more of this land can be in public hands and so that it can be managed better through state funding, as well as made accessible to the public so people can experience these natural resources. On the restoration side of things, we need to be planting wildflowers in public right-of-ways. I mean, rather than just planting hairgrass and ryegrass and mowing it every month, we could plant wildflowers and mow it once a year, and it would save everyone money. But that's a crazy idea, and no one believes anyone when they talk about that. You can sow old fields with native plants. If you have an old field that's been taken out of production, rather than just mowing it for hay, you can bring back in native plants and still have hay that you can use, but then also have more beneficial plants out there rather than exotic, hay grasses. Mow less whenever possible. Convert lawns when you don't need them. If you don't need all the lawn that you have, consider letting some of that go fallow and putting some native plants out there. When you're doing active landscaping around your house or, at work, anything like that, use native plants whenever possible in that landscaping and leave perennials there. And plant pollinator gardens when you have the space and when if you've got a green thumb and you want to actually do something about that. Pollinator gardens are kind of the best bang for your buck to concentrate butterfly habitat in urban and suburban areas. It lets you bring the butterflies back home, lets you experience them, lets you interact with them on pretty much a daily basis. They're easier to see, and it also provides a positive local impact, because if you're in a desert of nectar plants or a desert of host plants, providing a pollinator garden is an anchor that allows a resident butterfly population to exist in an otherwise fractured and sterile landscape. And it's not just providing habitat for butterflies, you're also providing habitat for local pollinators and wildlife that are utilizing those plants for cover, for food, and for refuge. Any size, anywhere, any kind of pollinator garden is good, from 10 square feet in your backyard to 100 acres out there, in the middle of, nowhere, Colleton County. Anything is beneficial. Put in your backyard, in your front yard, and, planters, pots, if that's all you can do. If you've got a space at the office, convince someone to let you put native plants out there rather than planting petunias every single year. Scatter wildflower seeds and, Walmart parking lots and that kind of stuff. We really need to be better utilizing this infrastructure that we have in the urban area as well as right-of-ways. Anywhere that we can put pollinator plants is going to be a benefit. And if you ever hire me for any reason, I will build a pollinator garden there. I've probably built 4 in my lifetime. Every place I've ever worked, they ended up with a pollinator garden. I have a problem. And the problem is I don't have enough pollinator gardens. So here's just kind of some best practices overall for butterfly gardening. You want to diversify the habitat that you're providing to butterflies. The more diverse conditions that you have within your garden, be that shade, water, soil condition, you're going to be able to grow more plants because you have more diverse habitat. And the greater plant diversity you have, the more butterflies you're going to be able to attract and maintain within your garden. And of course, grow native plants. There are some exotic, some, naturalized advents, from the surrounding area that do really well in butterfly gardens and that are a benefit for some of these tropical species, but really you need to be focusing on plants native here to the low country. Additionally, let nature take its course. If you're like me, when I do, a pollinator garden, let the thing go wild. I'm not going in, weeding meticulously, making sure I have individual plants spaced around. I let the plants do whatever they want. When the plant is happy, I'm happy because the butterflies are also happy. So if a plant's doing poorly, don't keep investing resources in it. Move it around, find a place it likes, or just get rid of it and try something else. And if a plant's doing really well, just let it go. Let it multiply. If it's literally taking over everything, maybe pull it out and put it in a tire or something somewhere on the other side of the yard. But, if stuff is doing good, let it do good, because that's less work for you to have to do. And let the plants grow where they want to go. Let them meander. Some plants don't stay in place. They move around, they spread, they volunteer, and they'll eventually find a place that they like, or they'll just keep popping up around all over the place. And that's just part of their, their nature, their natural history. Let them do what they want to do. These are not ornamental plants. These are native plants. They're doing their thing. And keep it messy. This is really important. Leave behind old stems and leaves to suppress weed growth and promote soil health, but more importantly, that is habitat for beneficial insects and other wildlife. You're leaving behind refuge for overwintering caterpillars and chrysalises to persist in. Additionally, bridge the gaps. Don't just build a pollinator garden that you like to look at. Think about what the butterflies and other wildlife actually need. Like if you've got a big weedy bushy area, in the alley behind your house, you don't really need to be focusing on providing cover in your butterfly garden. You need to be focusing on, say, nectar plants or on host plants. Like if everyone around you is planting zinnias, don't plant zinnias in your butterfly garden, plant host plants because you already have a reliable nectar source in the surrounding area. Think about what is actually needed in the landscape, fill in those holes for the local population. And lastly, it's probably the most important part, have fun with it. Just do whatever you want. Like, follow these best practices, but really let what you want to do guide you. Because if you're not enjoying it, you're not going to keep doing it. If you don't keep doing it, then it's not going to exist. And if it doesn't exist, then that's worse than, doing it how you want to do it versus as best as possibly could be done. And if you're not doing gardening, you just want to go out and see butterflies in their natural element, how exactly do you find them? Well, the best time to look for butterflies is spring, summer, and fall, from March through the end of October. You want to go out on warm, sunny days, midday between about 10 and 4. You want no rain, clear skies, and very little wind. Basically, when it's most comfortable to be out standing in the middle of a field, that's when the butterflies are out. That's when the best, viewing opportunities are going to be. It is what it is. All of us butterflies are fairly resistant to heat stroke, or we've already burned off all the brain cells that we had to spare. You want to also look in weedy areas, places with an abundance and diversity of flowering native plants. You want to look in power line cuts, dirt roads, dirt roads running through like old weedy fields. Those are the best places to look. Urban gardens, savannas, and sunny trails, anywhere where you've got a trail going through a forest and there's an open clearing, like an old logging deck or something like that. Those places are usually full of nectar plants and butterflies. It helps to have a set of binoculars or, a zooming camera. And if you don't know your butterflies, you want to bring a field guide with you so you can know what you're looking at. But really, you just need your eyes. If you've got good eyesight, you can just go walk out and just look at butterflies. You don't really need anything. And if you want to turn it into a citizen science project, bring a field notebook and a pencil, write down what you see and how many of them, and you can upload that to eButterfly and help benefit citizen science. And if you're looking for some field guide recommendations, these are the 3 that I typically recommend. There's a couple other ones that I don't personally have, so I can't recommend them, but a lot of people also recommend. The most relevant one here to the Carolinas is the top one, the Butterflies of North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia. This was just published 2 years ago. Everyone on there is a Carolina Butterfly Society member. This is the most recent, most precise to the Carolinas book that we have. It has color photographs and even county distribution maps for the Southeast, which is just exquisite. I love it. If Check and Tutor Butterflies of the East Coast is also very good. It's out of print, but it's a full page, like 12 by 9 book with beautiful color photography and a whole lot of detail in it because it's got a whole page per butterfly. If you can find a copy, get it. It's great. And then if you just need a cheap field guide that works anywhere in North America, I can recommend Kaufman's. I have that. Don't get the Peterson one. The Peterson one's terrible. Mainly the slides. They're just awful. But the Kaufman one's quite good. And it has the intricate Seder in it, so it's up to date on taxonomy. Some of the other books are better as far as their field IDs, but they don't have updated taxonomy, and it's just kind of pointless to be using them at this point. And if you want to learn more about butterflies, butterfly gardening, and other conservation efforts for pollinators, here are some places where you can learn more. You've got the Xerces Society, which is international. They're working on pollinator conservation and insect research all around the world. In North America, you have the North American Butterfly Association. They focus on butterfly garden and conservation of butterflies. They also run the NABA Counts program, so that's kind of like the Christmas bird count of butterflies. They have a ton of great resources on their website. Here in South Carolina, if you want to learn about native plants and native plant gardening, you got the South Carolina Native Plant Society. We have local chapters. They do local plant sales. They have great resources on their website. If you want some really technical detail, the most detail you're going to find, the most relevant here to the Carolinas, the Butterflies of North America website, they put out an annual approximation publication, which has county records, details on sightings, histograms of observances and stuff. Absolutely tremendous resource. That's free online on, I think, the North Carolina Parks website. QR code's down there in the corner. Fantastic resource. The authors of that are the same authors of the Butterflies of North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia. But this approximation has the most detail. It doesn't have photos, but it has all of the data. And then here in South Carolina, as well as North Carolina, we have the Carolina Butterfly Society, who I'm a member of and a past president of. And we have a focus on surveying and learning teaching about and conserving butterflies here in South Carolina and North Carolina. And we lead butterfly walks through the Midlands chapter of the Midland, South Carolina chapter, all throughout the state all year round. And if you're interested in joining us on some butterfly walks, please consider joining the Carolina Butterfly Society. It's a great way to connect with other folks who are interested in butterflies. We do field trips, all throughout, spring through fall. We also have a small grant program for helping butterfly conservation, research, and gardens in public spaces around the state. We don't have a whole lot of money for that, but we do give out about one or two grants per year. And if you want to learn more about Butterfly Garden, you can talk to some of our members who maintain their own butterfly gardens. And speaking of the Butterfly Society, our 2026 symposium is coming up middle of next month. So about a month from now. We just started accepting registrations this week. So our symposium is going to be September 11th through 13th. We're going to be doing that at Southern Aids Preserve up there in Chesterfield, South Carolina. We're having presentations on the 12th, and then we're doing bookending walks on the 11th and the 13th. It's $20 to register. That just covers your lunch. If you don't like pizza, I'm sorry, but we're going to have pizza. It's good pizza. And additionally, for the last year and a half, I have been working towards creating a butterfly field guide for Southern Aids Preserve. And so that is going to be unveiled at the symposium, and everyone who shows up is going to get a free copy. It's a small little, pocket field guide that just covers what's been seen on the preserve. But boy, writing a field guide is a lot of work. No one told me that. So I'm glad it's pretty much done. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Tom. This is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We only have a couple of questions in the chat room, which is where was the last population of the Great Southern White located in South Carolina?
So the one that I was familiar with on Edisto Island, that was at the Hutchinson House, actually. There are publicly accessible historic site there off of Point of Pines Road, right next to Botany Bay. I believe they were hosting in the hard salt pans in between Point of Pines and Botany Bay. But we had like a 9.5-foot nor'easter tide in the middle of December, and I think it froze all of the larvae and pupae that were out there. They all got submerged and died because I've not seen any since 2023.
Wow.
But it was every single year they were consistent. They were out there in like April. I mean, for a tropical migrant, if it's there in April, it has a local population. But I've also seen them in Beaufort in April. So I think there's still a couple of populations around the Port Royal Sound area, but I just don't live out there, so I haven't done a lot of survey work.
Yeah, it's hard to get to. The other question was, so say a little monarch butterfly caterpillar is on a small milkweed and it's done eating it. Can it move across the ground to get to more food, or is it toast?
So caterpillars, I think monarchs can actually smell. They have little antennae. So they can move across the ground. They can move in a hurry. If you've ever had 20 black swallowtail killers on your one poor sorry dill plant, you'd be amazed at where they show up. I found them, up 200 foot away on the other side of my yard on something.
Okay.
But generally, if you've got another host plant somewhere and you have a caterpillar and it's ate everything, you can knock it into your hand and go take it somewhere else, and you're not going to hurt it. But they can usually they'll go out and they'll find stuff, but it's if you're paying attention to them, it's usually best to move them.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
Yeah, Tom, I wanted to ask you, I think you were talking, it was the intricate satyr, might have been, said that the butterfly comes out for 2 weeks. Does it die after that or what?
That's the yucca giant skipper, and yes. So those really specialized butterflies like that one, they don't eat, they don't drink any minerals. They come out fully formed with all the nutrients they're ever going to have, and all they do is reproduce, lay eggs, and die.
Wow.
Like a lot of other insects, so most butterflies are long-lived. You'll see them for a month or two, and they continually replenish their calories and their energy stores, and they try and live as long as possible. But some of these specialized ones, they have a density of host plants on the landscape, and so they just come out, lay eggs, and croak, and that's all that they do as an adult.
So what is the average lifespan of, if you wanted to put it all together, of a butterfly?
Generally, I would say, excluding the winter, overwintering broods, most butterflies from egg to, death as an adult really only live for about 2 to 3 months.
Wow.
But sometimes you can have, say, a monarch that, is up in New England, realizes that the day's getting shorter in late August and flies down to Mexico and then lays eggs in Texas in February and it lives for 6 months. Or what is that? Yeah, or 6, 7 months. So generally not more than, 6 months.
So the butterflies, like they're banding the monarchs, when you band them, so they can trace them. They might die before you ever see them again.
Yep. So a lot of those tags don't get detected. That's why they do a lot of that in fall, because those butterflies that are flying through in fall, they're going to persist all throughout winter and they're going to find them on the overwintering grounds. But if you're tagging monarchs in like spring or early summer, they're probably not going to last more than, a month.
Wow. Thank you.
So have you heard of the Caterpillar Lab in New Hampshire? Deb asks.
I have not. Probably at some point, but I'm a homebody. I'm a sedentary resident. I don't get out.
Yeah, I'm the same way, but they've got a really great presence online, and they do a lot of in-person work there, carrying around caterpillars and a lot of talking to them. But they've done a lot of puzzles with caterpillars on them, and a lot of calendars and things like that. And they're working on movies, and just a lot of really cool stuff they do up there. It's worth looking into some of their resources.
Is anybody asking questions and I've got them muted by mistake? Let me know. Well, you can let me know, but Tom, this was brilliant. This was so, so good. It was.
Yep.
No, you learned your biology, you learned your caterpillar biology long ago, and it's just moving forward so fast. Are you getting any data from the was it the Modus project?
Not me.
Yeah.
So
No.
no one's given me any money to do anything about butterflies. I'm doing this in my off time. This isn't part of my day job.
Okay. So we'll write you a check.
Well, no, I should take that back. I think I've gotten maybe $1,500 to build some butterfly gardens in my days.
Great. And we are having a walk on Saturday.
Yep. So I will be leading a walk that is not necessarily butterfly focused because I can't always bet on the butterflies, although they are starting to show up. But we're going to Megget County Park over here in my neck of the woods. It's about 2 miles from me that way from my house. So I've got tropical migrant butterflies out here on my lantanas right outside my window over here. So they're starting to show up here in Megget. So we're going to go out there. I don't know how much nectar plants we're going to find out there, but if nothing else, we're going to have a fun time getting heat stroke, looking at plants, and hopefully finding some butterflies.
Excellent.
And it's one of our least visited and newer county parks. It's very much, passive public use. So I just want to show more people about it.
Killing two birds with one stone,
Mhm.
or supporting two butterflies with one stone.
And I don't have to drive very far, so it's super convenient.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This is wonderful.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Tom.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Perfect.
Y'all have a good night. And like I said, y'all were my guinea pigs tonight. So this is the first time I've given this presentation. So it
was
went better
excellent.
than I expected. I kept it under an hour, which was impressive.
It was
Great
like,
job.
yeah, by a minute. Yeah, it was brilliant. It was really good. The timing was amazing.
Just
And it was
thank you.
Very
Yes.
informational. Yep.
so informative. Absolutely. It was really, really good. Thank you.
Absolutely.